Oh, are we live, Jim?
We are, and I'm excited not only that we're live today, but what an amazing guest we have. This is like when you told me that you had invited Mark Schaefer to be on the show, I will have to say I was having my fanboy moments. I've got my copy of his latest book, and I mean,
I've got my notes and all.
Me too.
All right.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I am Tim Sohn here in Northeast Pennsylvania with Sohn Social Media Solutions, and so excited to be here with Jim Fuse, my trusty co-host, who is going to take it away.
Yeah, so we are just honored to have not only a great human being, but a keynote speaker, a global thought leader in the world of marketing. You know, Mark Schaefer, who's just up the road from me in a sense in Tennessee, because I'm down here in Atlanta, and we're so happy to have you here today, Mark. And this is Mark's 121st interview about this book. So we want you folks watching to come up with an original question, because we haven't been able to come up with one yet.
Yeah, it's around 121. I realized that I launched a book, and then everybody's still locked in. So we just want to talk, right? We just want to connect. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've been doing like 3 or 4 interviews a day for weeks and weeks and weeks. How many did I do? So it's quite an extraordinary time. And I'm losing my voice.
Well, thank you for being here, Mark. Tell everybody a little bit about you. Both me and Jim know you through social media marketing world, but just tell us a little bit about you, and we'll go from there.
Well, I worked in the corporate world for a long time and had a wonderful experience to do every kind of marketing job you can imagine. And I started my own business in 2008 and started consulting and started to do a little teaching. And then, that's when social media was really ramping up. And so I felt as a consultant and a teacher, I needed to immerse myself in the social media world, started blogging, and the blogging led to books, and the books led to speaking. And so today, I guess I'm a speaker, author. I also teach at Rutgers University, which I've taught there for, I think, 11 or 12 years now in their graduate program. Yeah, so I'm a teacher at heart.
That is amazing. So Mark, let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about how to create your cumulative advantage. Mark, when did this book come out?
February.
Just
a few weeks ago. Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Very cool. So Jim, do you want to take question number one for Mark?
So Mark, you had COVID-19, and what have you learned about yourself in the last year that you didn't know before the pandemic?
It was a hard year. It was a really, really hard year. What a lot of people don't know is right after I got better, I got sick again. And I was well for a couple of weeks, and then boom, I had a fever, and I was nauseous, and I had headaches, and I didn't get better. And so they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and they did test after test after test, and finally they figured it out in December. So I was sick like 10 out of 12 months of 2020. And then, wrote the book, and that took a lot out of me. And I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot from the experience. I learned a lot from writing this book. Oh my gosh. I always learn a lot. It's like getting a master's degree when you focus on reading and writing and researching for so long. But I did have an interesting epiphany. I took the whole month of January off. I've never done that in my life, but I had nothing left. I had been sick for so long, mentally and physically and psychologically. I had nothing left. And I told my wife, we need to get away for a couple of weeks. She found a really nice place that we could afford for a month right on the beach. And I was laying on the beach, and I felt so good, and I felt so relaxed. but I missed my work. And what the epiphany that I had was, I grew up in a blue collar, working class, Pittsburgh family. I come from a family of plumbers, right? And the traditional German stoic view of work is when you take a vacation, you get away from work, because work is something that you don't want to do. And I've had just this amazing and fortunate ride to get to a place where I love what I do. I have fun every day. I get to meet cool guys like you. We get to talk about big ideas. I see friends in the comments section, who are, Gail is excited to hear from me, and Sue Ann is on, who's followed me for years. And, I love what I do. And I realized, work is fun. And I'm running this old narrative in my head that work is something to get away from and to be avoided. And I have achieved this really great place in my life where I really, it's all blended together, and I'm living a very good balanced life. And so it seems weird that I even have to say that, but I'm still learning, right? Still learning about myself.
Well, and I think that's so important. I think we all continue to learn about ourselves. And I think you bring up a great point. And I think even in the book, it kind of relates to, right? Find that thing that you're passionate about that you can grow with. And, even like we were talking before the show about, like, you may get an opportunity and you may, have that opportunity to take off with something. That's probably not going to happen if it's not something that you enjoy, and you'll be like, why did I get myself into this?
And I talk about that in the book, right? So the book sort of sets up this whimsical fantasy race between me and Tim Ferriss, right? And it's kind of a literary device I made up to look at his career and my career, to examine why Tim Ferriss is the superstar and, hanging out with Oprah, and I'm not. And sort of the reveal is that I made lifestyle choices. And I'm 100%, happy and content where I am. I made the right choices. And ironically, Tim is making those same choices now. He's stepping away from this world. I mean, he's basically saying it's too much, and now he's making lifestyle choices too. So, there does have to be that blend.
For sure. And we should thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for being here. Gail was in the comments before I even hit go live. Thank you so much, Gail. As well as Sue Ann says, weird duckies we are, love work. So thank you for that. So Mark, tell us a little bit about your book is called Cumulative Advantage. What does that mean, and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, Tim, another thing I realized is that I've been working on one problem for 10 years. And if you look at how my books have evolved, you can see that I've been working on one problem for 10 years. And it's this: how can we be heard? It started shift in power, where the power is moving from Madison Avenue and big media companies to us. It's our voices. We can create content. We can be heard. And in 2012, when I wrote this book, we were on the cusp of this shift in marketing. The most exciting change was happening. How can we be heard? I was right. It shifted. By 2012, 2014, the lines crossed. For the first time in history, more content was being created by people than companies. Now, what do? How do we stand out? I wrote the content code. How do we get content to move? How do we apply that to individuals? That's what Known is about. my book known. How does a person capture this power to stand out? Marketing rebellion. How do we, now that the consumers have this power, they have a different expectation. In fact, they're in control. A brand used to be what we told you it was. Today, a brand is what people tell each other. Right? Now it's moved to such a degree that we are in control. Now, here we are, 2021. I saw recently that the amount of content being published on LinkedIn since the pandemic started last March has doubled in 1 year, just on LinkedIn. So arguably, if you're trying to stand out on LinkedIn, your job just got twice as hard. And so, what I'm trying to think is, what do we do? Even if you're great, you're being buried.
Right.
And let me tell you a personal story, just to show you how tough it is. I for years, I was a contributor to Harvard Business Review. I would send in an article, and they would accept about 1 out of every 3 of my ideas. Then about 5 years ago, they were like rejecting every one. And I asked the editor, I said, what's going on? She said, Mark, you're giving us great stuff. 2 years ago, we would take these articles. You'd be published. But corporate executives have found out that if they could get published in Harvard Business Review, it's great for their brand and great for their company. So they've got teams of people at big agencies writing articles for them. That's what you're competing with. I can't compete with that. Right? So, what do we do? Even if we're great, we're being buried. And so I think the next thing we need to look at is momentum. If we've reached this plateau, what do we do to get out? What do we do to keep it going? And what I found is that there's actually a lot of science, a lot of research behind this, and we can see these patterns throughout history, throughout our lives. Behind every successful person, behind every successful business, there is a pattern of momentum. And I think the thing that should bring a lot of people hope in this book is that you don't have to have $1 million. You don't have to have an Ivy League degree. That you just have to be aware of how it works and then think about, how do I apply this to my life? Before we went live, Jim and I were talking about this, right? He sees an opportunity, and what he's doing, he's applying the pattern from this book to his life. He sees it now. If you read this book, you'll never see the world the same way.
Right.
You'll see this world in patterns. And now Jim knows exactly what to do because the pattern repeats. If Jim plays his cards right, he's going to do it. He's going to make it because he knows the pattern. He knows what has to be next.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. So you talk a little bit in your book about the idea of initial advantage. What does that mean? How does that work? And on a personal level for you, what kind of initial advantages did you have?
Well, the research shows that if you have some initial advantage in your life that's meaningful in some way, if you play your cards right, you can turn that initial advantage into literally unstoppable momentum. This isn't me talking. This isn't me going rah, rah, rah. You can have unstoppable momentum. This is like deep research that's taken place over decades, that's been proven in athletics, sports, entertainment, education, technology, even how it applies to people's health. Mm-hmm. And so but the idea in the research that sort of I got obsessed about is the guy that did the research, this guy named Robert Merton, kept saying, well, It can happen that way unless there are countervailing processes. Then, even if you don't have this, you can create momentum. But he didn't say what it was. And I read and I read and I read and I watched all his speeches and he never said. So his son is still alive. He and Merton did his research on cumulative advantage. He studied Nobel Prize winners. How did they get there? How did they get there? He saw these patterns. So I called up his son. His son works at MIT. Believe it or not, he won a Nobel Prize. I don't think that was a coincidence. He said, Mark, I'm not the person you need to talk to. You need to talk to my stepmother. She was the researcher on the Nobel Prize project. So I contacted her. She's still working at Columbia. So she sent me all these unpublished papers. She said, I'm so glad you asked. So I'm getting all this research that's never been published before. And so now what does this all mean? And here's what begins momentum. Always. It's a random event. You get some idea. You get some inspiration. Maybe it's something you read in a book. Maybe it's something you're hearing from me today. Maybe it's something you read in the news. Maybe you're sitting next to someone at a conference and they make some observation about something and you think, that's interesting. Maybe something isn't happening that should be happening. You're thinking, why? What do I do? Before we got on here, right? Jim has this vision. Jim has this idea of this. He has an idea, but he's pursuing the idea. Momentum doesn't begin with an idea. It's the pursuit of the idea. That creates the energy, right? Now, next step. Does it fit? Does it matter? Is it meaningful? So let me give you a quick example from, there's lots and lots of examples of this in my own life, but here's something that happened in the last year. So when I had COVID, I was sick and out of it, and I had hypoxia. I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain, so I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't read, couldn't write. So, I was in this haze for weeks. Luckily, I got out of it. Some would argue that I didn't, but let's just suspend reality and think that I got out of it, that I'm not in a haze. And boom, my business had crashed. I had zero. And I went through this period of disorientation. So I had to think, what is my advantage? What makes me strong? I am a teacher. That's what I do. When I write a book, give a speech, write a blog post, do a podcast, I teach. But I realized the world needs me to teach something different right now. I stopped all my marketing content. I said, I need to teach. People are suffering. How do we deal with this anxiety? How do we deal with this disorientation? How do we deal in a world of endless uncertainty? Yeah. Let's go through this together. So that's what I started writing about. I started Facebook Live sessions, just helping people. I reached out, just anybody I saw who was hurting and suffering. I just said, call me. Let's just talk. I'm here. Let's just talk. The traffic on my website doubled.
Wow.
People were saying the content you're creating is the best content I've seen about this. This is priceless. I took all the content, made it into an ebook called Fight to the Other Side, gave it away. Didn't even ask for an email address. But the last page of the ebook said, if you love this ebook, you're really going to love a little speech I've created just for you for your Zoom meetings. If you want to inspire and energize your leadership meetings and you're tired of Zoom, bring me in. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you need. Not much money. I'll talk about this stuff. July, record month.
Wow.
August, record month. All right. Initial advantage applied to a seam. So a fracture in the status quo. What is the fracture in the status quo? People are going mad on Zoom meetings.
Yes.
Right? They're mad. They're tired. They're bored. Yes, we need Mark Schaefer. Yes, give us some hope. And here's the other key point. So, idea, pursued the idea, fit a seam, and you know what? That seam isn't going to last forever. It's over. All right? And that's really what strategy is about today, is looking for that opportunity right now. It's not a 250-page document and a 5-year plan. What is changing right now that fits me? And then you go through that with all your power and all your energy, and you keep going as long as you can, and then you look for the next one. That is what strategy is today. And so, look, I knew it wasn't going to last forever. You know, if you're making masks right now, ain't going to last forever. Right? But you made a lot of money in the last 12 months. Good for you, right? Now, let's start winding that puppy down, because I'm tired of it. So that's really what it's about. You know, it's just, you got to be aware. These opportunities are opening every minute of the day. Opening. We are in the greatest period of business opportunity in the history of the human race, because everything is being disrupted. How we learn, how we work, how we teach, how we educate our kids, how we commune, how we entertain ourselves, how we work out. I was talking to a friend of mine that works at Adidas. He said the pandemic has reinvented sport, redefined sport. Those are all opportunities.
Absolutely. Well, Gail has a question. She says, should we spend more time on our website than rented land, such as Facebook and other platforms? What's your opinion on that, Mark?
Well, everyone needs to have a website so that you can be found. You need a place to archive your content. Now, I think the whole rented land thing is fluffy, right? Because here's the truth. The economic value of content that's not seen and shared is zero. Stop trying to drag people to your website. Go where they are. If they're on Facebook, put your content on Facebook. If they're on LinkedIn, put it on LinkedIn, right? Put it freaking everywhere. Unleash the content. Don't gate the content. Give it away, right? If you gate your content, 95% of the people said, I'm not giving you an email address. Bye. 95% of your opportunity just went away, right? Unleash the content. Set it free wherever people are. Stop calling it rented land. It's where the people are. You know, you need to have a website. You need to have a home for your content, but, you know, go where the people are.
So true, so true. And Gail says, go where they are. Love this so much. Unleash the content. Okay, everyone, we will be back shortly. We're going to take a 15-second break for a message from our sponsor, StreamYard, and then we will have one or two more questions for Mark, and we'll wrap up the show. Here we go. And we are back live here on the Tim and Jim Show with Mark Schaefer. So grateful he is here with us today. And thank you to our sponsor, StreamYard, which we use every week to produce the Tim and Jim Show and many other projects myself and Jim work on. So Mark, thank you so much for all of this. I would love if you would share a little bit in terms of, you've been working with economically disadvantaged children for a while, and you have a section in the book called Cumulative Disadvantage. Would you talk a little bit about the work you've been with that and kind of how you see that idea?
Well, one of the things I realized as I was writing the book is that every business book and every self-help book is elitist. it assumes you have the money to buy the book. It assumes you have the time to read the book. It assumes you have the resources to make changes in your life to activate what you learn. And as I was writing my book, I had two audiences in mind. One would be all the people who love me, that buy my books and support me. And the other is, I've worked for the last 13 or 14 years with, economically challenged families in the inner city, and they live in a high crime area. And I kept thinking, does this work for them? Does this work for them? And the answer is no. And it just made me angry that is not fair. That the reasons behind economic disadvantage and economic disparity it's cosmically complex, and we're spending billions of dollars of government money and billions of dollars of corporate money, and essentially over the last 50 years we've made almost no progress. And so I thought about what are the lessons from the book we can apply to this. And it's really this simple, that momentum, the energy of momentum begins with this initial advantage. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be a handout. It can be encouragement. It can be an introduction, opening a new door, supporting an idea. This is something all of us can do. And I've seen this work in my own life, where just paying attention to someone, encouraging someone, giving them a little direction, sends a ripple that changes history. Literally, it does. I'm creating ripples in history by paying attention and helping people every day. So it's a different way to look at momentum. We're all surfing the crest of a wave of advantages that built and built and built and built. And some of us are riding a huge wave, like Bill Gates. Some of us are riding blue collar waves. We've got to fight a little harder to find our momentum. And some of us in society are being pulled down by the undertow, right? They can't even catch a breath to even read a book, right? And I see this in the communities that I'm working. And really, it's about all of us getting involved in a little way. There's a great case study from Atlanta, where Jim lives, about people who volunteered in a high school, just completely turned the high school around. Worst high school in the country. And now they have a higher graduation rate, and college attendance rate is way above the national average, right? No more money. Didn't build a new gym. Didn't build a new science department. It was people volunteering and coming alongside these children and giving them encouragement and hope. And that's something every person listening today can do. So if you get my book, when you get to chapter 10, you got a big surprise. It's going to go a wild and crazy way, but I think it'll have a big impact on you, and hopefully it'll make some small dent in the world.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Mark. This has been an absolute pleasure. Tell people where can they buy the book, and how can they connect with you online?
Yeah, it's easy to find me at businessesgrow.com. You can find my blog and my podcast, my books. My books are all over. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's paper, hardback, audio, Kindle, and it's dirt cheap. You get two years of my life for $19.
Well worth the investment. Absolutely.
Thanks so much, fellas. Appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for listening today.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Next week, we'll have Helen Lamb from the live stream shopping platform to talk about live shopping. So we're excited to have her next week. See you next week, everyone. Thanks all.